Hi, my name's Susanna, and today I'll be giving an example of the sort of research you can do when you start focusing on a historical object. You probably recognize the name Lafayette. Nearly 200 years after the Marquis de Lafayette last stood on American shores, the 2015 musical Hamilton brought Lafayette's name and story back into the limelight. A celebrity yet again, Lafayette has long had devoted fans in the United States, and the demand for items to celebrate and commemorate him has left a material trail reaching from the 18th century all the way to today. Born in 1757 to a noble family in France, Marie-Joseph Paul Yves Roch Gilbert du Motier Lafayette was not the typical American patriot, but his exceptional story is precisely what led Americans to love him. He chose to fight for American independence when the war's outcome was anything but certain. Back in France after the American Revolution, Lafayette fell out of favor with the French government and fell into a lot of debt. So in 1824, when he received President Monroe's offer to visit the United States, he jumped at the opportunity. Lafayette's heroism, paired with the timing of his visit near the 50th anniversary of American independence, made him a uniquely unifying figure in the early Republic. This pair of gloves reflects the specific moment in history, Lafayette's 1824 to 1825 tour of the United States. They speak to the natural human desire to commemorate and connect ourselves with historical moments and people. These gloves represent so much more than their materials. These pieces of leather sewn together represent a celebration of American patriotism and celebrity, and also help us recognize the central place women held in the widespread memorialization of the early Republic's favorite foreign son. On August 14, 1824, Lafayette stepped off a boat in Sandy Hook, New York, to begin his 13-month trip through the 24 states that made up the young nation. Arriving in America just prior to the 50th anniversary of American independence, Lafayette received a hearty welcome as a returning hero, with crowds, receptions, parades, balls, and other events all held in his honor. The celebrations of his tour emphasized his historic actions during the American Revolution. The story of him leaving France to fight for the cause of American liberty was retold in songs, theatrical productions, and newsprint. He was escorted town to town by local cavalry units, viewed mock battles, met with the veterans of the Revolution, and marched in parades to honor his military service of decades before. However, this pair of gloves highlights another side of Lafayette's trip. It wasn't just men who celebrated the returning Frenchman. Women were also important players in commemorating Lafayette and asserting their patriotism in the process. There was an outpouring of commemorative goods for Lafayette during a time when it seemed like nearly all Americans had Lafayette fever. Theaters and museums displayed images of Washington and Lafayette. Jewelers placed Lafayette medals in display windows. Grocers began selling items like Lafayette punch, brandy, salt herring, and molasses. Confectioners got in on the business with Lafayette and Washington tarts. And last but not least, dry goods stores sold Lafayette gloves and ribbons. Some of these items were simply renamed to cash in on the patriotic fervor, since for some of the shopkeepers, the sale of Lafayette items was motivated as much by capitalism as by patriotism. However, there were plenty of goods specifically depicting Lafayette alongside George Washington, patriotic exclamations, and patriotic imagery that were for sale upon Lafayette's arrival in the United States. These gloves are an example of an item that would have been purchased to show one's patriotism, as well as revealing a desire for a souvenir to remember the visit. The gloves are fine leather, wrist high, with 3 seams running up from the fingers and through the print of Washington and Lafayette. Their heads angled slightly towards each other and away from the viewer so that observers could see and appreciate the design. These gloves are a tangible example of women as patriotic citizens who claimed a space among the military fanfare of Lafayette's visit. The many celebratory balls thrown in Lafayette's honor were occasions in which women were given a chance to socialize with the general. One of the largest parties, the Lafayette Ball, transformed the aging Castle Garden in New York into an elegant venue where elite groups hosted an extravagant affair for the wealthy, with over 5,000 guests in attendance. Women purchased new dresses, gloves, and other attire for these exciting occasions that brought together dancing and patriotism. Beyond these balls, Lafayette also held special meetings for women away from the crowded male-dominated military inspections and parades. Newspaper articles detail receptions Lafayette held specifically for women, making it clear that women were not silent in their desire to be included. They attended meetings and balls to honor Lafayette, often wearing special ribbons or gloves to mark the occasion. But as mentioned before, this pair of gloves is but one of many commemorative objects created during Lafayette's time as the nation's guest. There were a large number of objects for sale with Lafayette's image on them. This includes silk umbrellas with a likeness of General Lafayette, flasks also with a likeness of General Lafayette and the United States coat of arms, playing cards, platters, plates, pitchers, and of course gloves. As the celebrations of Lafayette also commemorated the independence of America from Britain, it is ironic but financially savvy that many patriotic items were produced in England and imported to the United States. In particular, Staffordshire pottery abounded with patriotic wares, using existing portraits of Lafayette to make plates, plaques, and jugs that welcomed Lafayette to America. There was Staffordshire pottery created to depict Lafayette landing in New York to begin his trip around the country, as well as pieces that presented Washington and Lafayette side by side, similar to the print upon the gloves in question, and still others that imagined the scene of Lafayette tearfully visiting Washington's grave. This pair of gloves brought together the images of Washington and Lafayette, beloved military leaders and apostles of American liberty, onto an item meant for female consumption and display. While much of Lafayette's visit involved military fanfare, these gloves quietly attest to the central role women played in the commemoration of a national hero. Lafayette's influence continues to be part of the American story, and with the 250th anniversary of American independence approaching quickly at only 6 years away, I expect the nation's admiration for Lafayette isn't going away anytime soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.